Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where today I want to talk about one of the more unique pianists to come out over the last 60 years, and this is Abdullah Ibrahim, who's still very much going strong. Now, he's 90 years old, and his life, in many ways, reflects the modern history of his country and, in many ways, of music itself. Now, he was born in South Africa, and about a decade, just over a decade after he was born, what they called the apartheid system came into being. And Abdullah is a black man, and we all know the history of that, and everyone's got their own opinions. But let's just look at the music and how that sort of intertwined with what was going on culturally. Now, he's a prolific composer and a prolific releaser of albums, and no two of his albums are really the same stylistically. He explored many different styles across his various albums, some of which traditionally leaned in, or I should say, into traditional African and South African music in particular. Some of it was bebop in that familiar style that arose among Black American composers and then became a style of international renown. Everyone wanted to copy it. Some of the work of his that I actually like best is his sort of modal post-bop stuff, which is just so harmonically interesting. At times it can be soothing, at times it can be very, sped up and sort of challenging. But no matter what, he always created stuff where you can tell his music is incredibly sincere. One of the best albums of this sort of fusion African style comes from 1973, and this was called African Space Program. And then just a couple years later, actually later that same year, he did his ode to Duke Ellington. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. The Journey from 1977, another one of these sort of very avant-garde albums. Don Cherry, a great avant-garde musician himself, one of the best in avant-garde jazz, is on that album. And some of his more recent stuff, comparatively anyway, is really, really good. From the 90s, Cape Town Flowers is a great album. And one of his most recent from 2019, The Balance, is arguably one of his finest, most sort of cool modal jazz type of albums, which are such great harmonies. But definitely check out as much of his discography as you can get through. Much of it, but not all of it, is on the Spotify's and the Whatify's and the rest of its. But there are other places like YouTube where you can dig deeper on into his discography. Now, in many ways, maybe this sort of hybrid, this sort of not even hybrid, but this ability to sort of shift between styles, sometimes with fusing the styles together and sometimes without. Maybe that's a product of the fact that he grew up listening to music from throughout the world and he played throughout the world. In the 60s, he moved to New York before returning briefly to South Africa. He played a lot in Europe, places like Switzerland, again in the 70s and 80s, back into the New York scene. And then in the 90s, when the apartheid system fell and a new government came in, he moved back to South Africa, put together many ensembles there, put together many concerts. And I suppose you could say that maybe all of these interesting experiences informed the different sort of chapters of his career and the various vectors of the music, the trajectory of the music itself. He never put out a bad album. All of it is really interesting, and if you don't like one style, you'll probably like another. I like all of it. So definitely check him out. He's still going strong, and he's just a marvelous talent who's been with us many, many years. Like, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Take care.